and welcome to another episode of the Magners to Missionaries podcast. We're so grateful that you took the time to listen to our podcast today. Today, we're in episode 5, but it's part 2 of our pre-field ministry discussion. So if you've not heard episode 4, part 1, we encourage you to take a moment and pause here, go back and listen to that part 1. Part 1 was about just some things that God has taught us and is teaching Luke and Vivian as they're still on their pre-field ministry. Today, we're going to be talking more about the practical side of what it looks like for a missionary on pre-field ministry, just everyday kind of life sort of thing, how they go about scheduling meetings, how they go about learning about new churches that they can reach out to, all that sort of thing. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. We hope this is an encouragement to you. Maybe you're a missionary on pre-field ministry or about to start your pre-field ministry and you're looking for some tips about how to schedule meetings or how to find churches, things like that. This will be a great episode for you. Or maybe you're someone who is interested in what does that life look like for a missionary on pre-field ministry? Because I remember that when I was on my deputation time, I had a lot of people that would ask me, how do you go about this? What do you do? What does it look like? And I understand that. How would they know? So we hope this episode is an encouragement to you.
We want to encourage you to be organized. It is so important as you're reaching out to hundreds and thousands of different churches that you have some sort of plan and you have some sort of organization to be able to keep track of all your different contacts, be able to make notes on who you have reached out to and what communications you have had with that church and that pastor so far. And this is just something we both think is so important right from the very beginning, that you start off organized and with a plan.
I had learned so much about being an organized person while I was on deputation, my pre-field ministry. Now, I always kind of was really organized. I enjoy being organized and having organization, but I learned kind of a whole new level of it. Like Luke said, when you're reaching out to thousands of churches, you have to know who you're reaching out to. And I know for a fact that there was times when I did reach out to the same church twice, just because, I had forgotten, that I already reached out to the church. I didn't make my notes correctly. So the more organized you are, the better that you would be at doing the right kind of thing. I even had a time where I had scheduled 2 churches on the same time. Luke, has that ever happened to you?
Yes, unfortunately, that has happened once so far already.
Yeah, so if you're a missionary and that happens to you, of course, it's really disappointing and you feel really bad about it. But just remember, you're not the only one that's done it. We've both done it. Another thing that I learned is that you really have to work hard and be self-disciplined. If you are not a self-disciplined person, you're really going to struggle in that pre-field ministry time. Why? Because you don't have a boss. You don't have that kind of 9-to-5 schedule, someone that is making sure that you clock in on the right time or early and making sure that you stay until the time that you're supposed to. So if you're not self-disciplined, you'll really struggle with getting all of your work done.
We have seen this a lot in ourselves so far, that this is something that we're learning and growing in right now. It's been such a struggle fighting against the temptation to be lazy during this time. As you mentioned, without the accountability of a boss and a normal kind of job where you clock in and clock out, where we are our own boss of, if anything is going to get done, we have to be accountable to ourselves to be disciplined enough to get that work done. It's also helpful to have accountability from others, whether this is from your sending pastor or other trusted close pastors, or it could be from your mission board or whatever kind of organization, if you're with one like that, or even from other close missionaries. For us, the accountability, for me, a lot of my accountability comes from you, Josh, as my older brother and as another missionary and as someone that I have a close relationship with. You keep me accountable as to making sure that I'm continuing to reach out to churches and doing the best we can to book our meetings.
Sometimes it's just not even on purpose. I'm just asking you what your plans are for the day or what you're working on, all that kind of thing. And you'll say something like, oh yeah, I've got to research into this group of churches, or I'm sending out these emails, all that sort of thing. So yeah, just having good friends, and of course we're brothers, but we're great friends as well. Just having great friends in the ministry that are looking out for you really helps. I didn't, in the beginning of my pre-field ministry, I didn't have a lot of accountability. And especially right at the beginning, I really struggled to make sure that I wasn't being lazy. Like Luke had said, that you have to be careful you're not being lazy. I really struggled with that because I really didn't have anyone checking up on me in the beginning. But
Mhm.
as I became friends with other pastors and friends with more missionaries and things like that, my accountability grew and it really helped me.
Mhm.
So let's talk a little bit about how you go about getting in contact with pastors. I'll start off because I had done my pre-field ministry first and then passed a lot of ideas and information on to Luke. And I'm curious, now he's 6 months into his process of deputation. I'm curious how he's adjusted from the way that I did things, because as we're going to talk about, not every missionary does it the same way, and
Right.
that's okay. So when Katie and I started our deputation time, I had started with a list of about 10 to 15 pastors, and those were friends of our sending church at that time. I had reached out to each and every one of them, and what I did was I started to build an Excel sheet. Now, I really love Excel. I just feel like it helps me stay very organized, and it had all of the information in one spot. So at that time, I started to build this Excel sheet, and what I would do is I would put in the church name, the pastor, the phone number of the pastor, and the email address, and sometimes the website information and things like that. And I would call them and try to talk to the pastor. And then I would make notes on every single church that I reached out to, everything right there in that Excel sheet. So it was all in one place. Now, what I found was that over time, especially about a year into my time of deputation of pre-field ministry, was that I really wasn't getting very far with the phone calls. I would get so many times I'd get a voicemail and no one would ever call me back. I would have many times that I would get to talk to like maybe just a secretary, and they would say, "Oh yeah, we'll pass on the information to the pastor." And I'm sure they did. I'm not saying they didn't, but that was always, it was hard when you didn't actually get to speak with the pastor. So I had prayed about it and I was talking with other missionaries and with other pastors. I came to the conclusion that I was going to stop making cold calls. That's a really popular term amongst missionaries, is cold calling, like a salesman, or exactly is what it is. I came to the conclusion I was going to stop making cold calls. And what I was going to do was find out the best email address that I could for that pastor. And I was going to send as many emails as possible in a single day or in a single week. That I was just going to send out mass emails with our church, with our information. And Luke's going to talk a little bit about those emails later and how we can set up nice looking emails. But the goal was just to get our information out to as many pastors of churches of like faith as possible. And what I would do is I would just continue to build that Excel sheet, and I would make notes on if I heard back from that pastor or if I didn't heard back from that church. And it really helped me a lot. So Luke, really quickly, kind of how did you take that idea of what I sent to you, because I sent you that whole Excel sheet of, I don't even know how many thousands of churches was on it. How did you adjust that? Did you change any of the information I had in there?
I didn't really change a whole lot. I only changed slightly our approach to reaching out to churches. From hearing the way that you did it and also talking with other missionaries about how they go about reaching out to each individual church, we prayed about it, and the Lord gave us the idea to begin by researching the church individually, making sure that their doctrines would be correct and that we would agree with their standards. And I know that you would do that as well. But that would
Mm-hmm.
be the first step in our process before we would then set up an email to send out. And you gave us the idea to use this website called MailChimp, and this has been very helpful to us to be able to create a nice, professional looking email that's not just, kind of simple with just some words and a couple paragraphs about some of the information we want to share. But on MailChimp, we're able to put some colors in there on a background page that would look nice and put in pictures and be able to organize it in a very clean way. We highly recommend, if you're a missionary out there but not sure what to do, check into MailChimp and see if that's something that would work for you. We've enjoyed it a lot. And through that, we would then send out our first initial contact email through MailChimp. And I talked to one missionary who told me that his sending pastor gets so many emails from different missionaries that unless the subject line or the very beginning of the email has his first and last name in there, then he's not even going to read the rest of the email. He wants to know that the missionary has taken time to do their research into his church to know that he is the pastor, to see if they're really serious about wanting to contact him specifically. And that's just
Hmm.
this one pastor's philosophy. That's certainly not everybody's. But
Right.
when I heard that missionary tell me this about his sending pastor, I thought, well, why don't we try to take the time? And certainly it does add up to be a good amount of extra time, but we will make individual emails for each church we reach out to. And in the subject line, I put Dear Pastor so and so, and in the beginning of the email, the same thing, so that it maybe hopefully feels a little bit more personalized to the pastor when he opens it
Yeah,
up.
it's a really good idea.
After we send out our first initial email contact, I'll try to wait about a week and give them a call. If it goes to voicemail or I don't hear anything back from them, I usually wait another week or two and try to call again. We've found in these first 6 months of reaching out, making contacts, that there have been a lot of voicemails doing this so called cold calling that you
Hmm.
mentioned, as you found out with yourself as well. But this is the way we're doing it right now. The Lord has blessed. We've been able to book meetings. And if we're still not hearing back from them after an email and two phone calls, a lot of times I go back and I'll even send a second email and try really just trying to get in contact with them again.
So that's a really great way to do it. Like we mentioned, each missionary is doing it just a little bit different than each other. And there's not necessarily a right and a wrong way. It's just however the Lord leads you to reach out to these pastors. I want to go back to something you said about looking into the churches and how you do that research. So for Katie and I, the most time that we spent on our
Yes.
pre-field ministry and deputation was actually researching churches. And that's really great, the opportunity we have nowadays in the day and age of technology that we live in, that just about every single church is going to have either a website or a Facebook page. Nowadays, many have Instagrams and things like that. So it's great that you can find a lot of information about the church. I heard many stories, especially of missionaries of maybe 10 years before me, that
Right.
kind of generation, that would tell stories of these churches they would show up to, and it was not at all what they expected. They would show up, and it's just totally different from the kind of church than they thought they were walking into. And they would feel really embarrassed or awkward, really out of place. And Katie and
Right.
I did not want that to happen to us. And praise the Lord, it never did. It never happened to us one single time where we
Oh,
just showed
wow.
up into a bad situation because we didn't know what that church was going to be like. And that's all thanks to having technology that we have nowadays. So I encourage you as missionaries to really do your research into these churches that you're
Yes.
going to reach out to before you reach out to them. And with that, you really can save yourself from a lot of heartache, a lot of trouble.
Our time is so valuable. We want to get to the mission field as quickly as possible. We want to raise our support as quickly as possible. And God is going to give us our support in his time frame. But we should do our very best to use this time as profitable as we possibly can. Therefore, like you're saying, if we can avoid walking into a church that we would not agree with just by spending the time during the weekdays to do our research, that will help us a lot in the long run. We have also found some websites that have been extremely helpful for us in finding churches and being able to make contacts. Our favorite website that we both have enjoyed using is a website called IFBMT. Josh, why don't you share what that website is about?
Yeah, so it stands for Independent Fundamental Baptist Missionary Trails, and it was started by a man named Anthony Master, and he's really had a heart for helping missionaries and helping churches connect with each other to help missionaries get to the field faster, but also to help missionaries who are on furlough. And he's created this website that it's run by the missionaries. So it's really great. A missionary can find out about a church that's not on this website, or I use it on an app actually, and they're not on this interface. And that missionary then has the ability to be able to add a church.
Hmm.
Or say, if I go to a church and I find out that this church isn't able to take on missionaries this year, they're in a spot where they're not able to support new missionaries right now. Well, as a missionary, I can go and add a tag, they're called, and it'll say missions maxed, which means they're not taking on missionaries right now. So it's really cool. You can search by state, you can search by church name, you can search by pastor name, you can search by tags. Like you can put what kind of style of music you're looking for. You can put what version of the Bible you're looking for. You can put all these different tags, even different colleges. So if this church is really involved or really connected with the college that you graduated from, you can search that on this website and it'll pull up churches that are connected with that college. So it's a really fantastic tool for missionaries. So if you've never heard of it, Independent Fundamental Baptist Missionary Trails, we suggest, this is our number one suggestion for missionaries. I think Luke had told me recently that it has over 15,000 churches on it now. Now that's impressive because when I started with this website, it had 13,000. So it's grown over 2,000 churches since that time. Now I remember when I was on Prefield Ministry, I was updating churches all the time. If I found a new email address or a new phone number, I was updating it all the time. So it's up-to-date information for missionaries. Now that is the biggest one that I used. Luke, have you found any other ones? Because I really didn't use other ones. There were some that I used in the beginning, but I stopped using them because I found that they were just really, really outdated.
There's another one that I have found called Missions 21. This is a different kind of website with the same goal of connecting churches with missionaries. Missions 21 runs by the missionary will create a personal account, and then you can update that account with pictures, with your prayer letters, with your testimony, your story, your goals, all of that kind of information you would update about your account. And then the pastors in the churches would then go on the website themselves, and they are the ones actively looking for missionaries through this website. And we've actually had 2 or 3 different churches reach out to us through this website just by I created an account and I keep up with it once in a while and check it and update our prayer letters and things like that. And then the pastors are reaching out. They are the ones being proactive, reaching out to us. So that has been a wonderful blessing as well. And then there is one called M is for Missions. And this website, I don't know a lot about it, but I know that this website was created for the goal of helping fund missionaries. If there's individuals or pastors or churches that would just like to, without even maybe having a connection to the missionary so far, just like to make a donation or even be praying for missionaries specifically. M is for Missions is a website that was created where you, as the missionary, can update your prayer request and put in your information there. And then individuals and churches have the option to donate specifically to you if they wish. So, those are some websites we recommend that you would check out if you're on the Prefield ministry.
That's really interesting. I've never heard of either of those. So, something else that can be really helpful to a missionary that is looking for churches to reach out to, churches to visit, and to support them is Facebook groups. We found a lot of help through Facebook groups. A big one is called the Ministry Connection. There's a lot of pastors, a lot of missionaries, a lot of people in the ministry that are in that Facebook group. And it's really helpful. Sometimes you'll find pastors that post in there saying, "Oh, I've got a missions conference on this date. Are there any missionaries that are able to come?" Sometimes you'll find missionaries that put their information on there. I know a couple times while I was on my deputation that I had put my own information in there and just said, "Hey, I'm this missionary going to this country. Here's my information, my website, that sort of thing. I've got these dates open in this location." And I was able to book probably 5 or 6 different meetings just through that one specific Facebook group.
Another one that's really good is Independent Baptist Pastors and Missionaries Connect. This group is very similar to the way the Ministry Connection group works, a great opportunity for missionaries and pastors to be able to connect with each other, as well as ask questions about the ministry, provide helpful information from experience and through wisdom. But a great aspect of both of these, and then a third one I'm about to mention, is also being able to reach out and find a place to stay if you're traveling. If maybe something unexpected happened, or even if you just haven't been able to find a place to stay yet, and you're looking for a prophet's chamber or a missionary house or something like that to be able to stay in for a night, a couple nights, provide housing for your family, you can reach out through these groups And through this third one called the Elisha Project, the pastors and the churches will see your request for maybe a specific area or a specific time frame. We actually were able to find a prophet's chamber just last week. We're going to be staying in a different one next week. Both of these contacts came from pastors who saw my post on these Facebook groups and reached out to me directly, offering their prophet's chamber for us to stay in.
So, Facebook groups are a really big help to us as missionaries. We're not sure all of who our listening group is just quite yet, but if there's some wives of missionaries out there that are maybe listening to this podcast, there's a Facebook group out there for the ladies called BMW. We think stands for Baptist Missionary Wives. And it's just for the women, and it can be really helpful. The ladies can put in there some counseling things that they're working with, some help that they might need, just a struggle maybe that they're dealing with on the mission field or even on pre-field ministry. So if you're interested in that, go ahead and look into that and add yourself into that group. And we think it could be a really big help for wives of the missionaries.
We also have found having our own social medias that are focused towards our ministry helpful as well. We mentioned earlier how we spent a lot of time researching churches. Well, we know that sometimes certain pastors, certain churches will do their own research on the missionary that's contacting them. And we have our Facebook page and our social media open, available to the public, with any information that may be pertinent to our ministries out there for the pastors and churches to be able to find us and look and do their side of research that they feel like they want to do.
So that brings me back to how some missionaries do things just a little bit different than other missionaries. Luke and Vivian, they have a Facebook page and an Instagram that's just their ministry. Katie and I, we don't have that. But of course, we all have our own personal ones. And like Luke was saying, we keep it open to the public just so that if a church wants to look us up or a pastor wants to look us up and see what our personal Facebook pages actually look like, they have that opportunity because we want to live lives that are open and available. And we're not trying to hide anything from these churches.
We also recommend that you spend some time putting a good website together for your ministry. On our websites, we have spent time with an opening page that's just some brief information about our ministry, and then certain other tabs on that website that would bring you to things like our testimonies, our call to the ministry, our beliefs and our doctrines, our statement of faith, our contact information, whether through phone number or email, or all of these kinds of things that would be just a website out there that we can plug in everywhere. It's on our prayer card. It's on our Facebook pages. It's everywhere available. And this is another great area for the pastor and church to be able to go and research into us and look at who we are before they continue on a conversation that we're trying to have with them.
So this is why we've been mentioning that we have our own websites, magnerstoitalia.com and magnerstomexico.com, because there's so much information on there about our ministries and about ourselves that you can go on there. They're still available today, and you can go on there and see a little bit about who we are as missionaries. Let's talk a little bit, Luke, before we end this episode, on how a missionary goes about finding meetings and all that. Let's talk a little bit about what the missionary does at a meeting when they're scheduled with a meeting and they show up. The first thing I want to recommend is to have yourself a good video, a video that shares your burden for that country. It has music on it. It's got your talking, it's got your testimonies. Probably not everyone has that, but it's got some information about the country you're going to. It looks really good. Many missionaries are using, there's some companies out there, some people out there that are making videos for missionaries. Nowadays, there's many different websites that you can use to make your own videos, but really having a video that looks really sharp, looks really clean, I believe will really help your ministry.
I agree, and I think the video is something that catches people's attention. So putting time and effort and thought into what you want your video to look like and the information that you want to have in there is very important. It's also great to be able to have a good table display. Again, this is something that's going to catch people's attention. Oftentimes, if the pastor allows you to set up your table display, it's usually in the foyer, it's usually by the door, And it's usually the first impression that the church members have when they walk in the door of who this missionary is and where this missionary is going. We have found throughout this first 6 months already that there's certain things that we want on our table and there's certain things we don't want on our table. A lot of the souvenirs that we have from Italy, well, of course, they say Italia on it, or whatever they say is in the Italian language, and that a lot of people are not used to that. There's one thing that we had on our table. It's a hat that I got as a souvenir from my time being in Venice. A lot of people know about Venice. A lot of people know where Venice is or what Venice, the canals of Venice and all of that. However, the hat is from Venice, so it says on it Venezia. And we would have that right in the middle of our table, and I thought this was a great souvenir. And people would come up to us and say, "Oh, you're going to Venezuela?" And we're like, "No, we're obviously going to Italy." And it just took a little while of people continuing to think we're going to this other country to realize, okay, maybe we shouldn't have this specific thing on our table. But we have other great things. I think it's always good to have a flag that represents the country you're going to. Josh, what was some of your favorite things that you had on your?
So through the years, the 3 years we were on our pre-field ministry, we did the same thing. We would find that we took things off our table, we added, same thing with our video. We had 3 different versions of our video just because we saw how other missionaries were doing it and what looked really good or sounded really good. So we'd update it over time. One of the things that we really enjoyed was having a small pop-up banner. And you could buy those nowadays for around $20. They're really not that expensive, and it can sit on your table, and it just looks really clean, really updated, really modern, and it's great for the table. It's easy to carry around with you. That was probably our favorite thing. We didn't start with that. We started with the old trifold board sort of thing that had Velcro on it, and that's what we knew that people were doing until we got out on the road and we saw other missionaries had all these slide pop-up banners. Everyone had one, and we had to update to that just so that we were staying with the times. We didn't want to be that missionary that showed up and looked like they were still from 25, 30 years ago. So that was probably one of our favorite things. So we also had some toys on the table that the kids would be able to play with, and that would really help draw the attention of the kids, and to be able to then at that point influence these kids and be able to impact them with what a missionary gets to do. And we'd get to have these personal conversations with 5, 6, 7 year olds, also many times, of course, the 12, 13, 14 year olds. But it was great to be able to impact these kids because we had a toy that was from Mexico that they could play with.
One of my favorite things to see on other missionaries' tables and that we always try to put out on ours is what is the currency like in that country they're going to. This often draws attention and starts conversations for us, at least at our table, because the euros, they look different, they're different sizes, they're different colors, and I think that's always something cool that I like to go and look at other people's tables at. And then we have some other souvenirs and things on there. Coffee's a really big thing in Italy. We have a mocha pot and a little espresso cup and things like that. But then there's some practical things on there that I think are really helpful. One of them would be our sign up for our prayer letter sheet. And this is something that people do differently. The cooks that we're going to go work with, I really like how they did it was they had a specific book, a notebook that was, not just like a cheap spiral bound notebook, but a nice, good notebook, and they used this notebook all throughout their pre-field ministry. And now they still have that notebook and will look back on it from time to time as these are all the people that cared enough to sign up for our prayer letter.
That's really cool.
We have not found a nice notebook that we've liked to do that. So in the meantime, we've just been doing a sheet of paper, but made a little bit of a design so that it's not just a blank sheet of paper. And I think that's something that needs to be on everyone's table display is somewhere where people can sign up to get your prayer letters that you're sending out. Also, we have those different social medias you mentioned and our website. We have QR codes on a piece of paper on a stand there on our table. Our generation is getting into the QR codes, and that's becoming very, very popular. So we found that's helpful for other people to be able to quickly scan that, follow our social media, and see the videos that Vivian worked so hard on putting together for what we are doing right now. Now, I'm curious, Josh, have you had candy on your table display while you guys were traveling?
We did. So, being missionaries to Mexico and how close relationship the United States has with Mexico, it was really easy to find cheap candy in the United States that was very popular here in Mexico, made in Mexico, has Spanish packaging and things like that. So we did have candy on our table. We did different things. We'd have lollipops that are from here in Mexico. So, of course, they're either covered in chili powder or they would have a chili powder in the middle. We would do these little spoons, very, very small, like the size of your finger. And on the spoon would be some tamarindo. It's a kind of candy they eat down here made from the tamarind plant. So that was really popular on our table. But the reason we were able to do that so easy is, like I said, it was easy to find in the United States and it was cheap. I know some missionaries that did it because of that reason and some that wouldn't because it was really hard to find candy from their country very cheap.
Right.
What are you guys doing?
We do not have candy available on our table. Like you're saying, it's much more expensive for us to be able to get Italian candy. However, we do have some Italian candy, and I really enjoy getting to give that candy to each pastor that we go and have a meeting with. And if they have children or however many children they have in the candy, we always let all of them try it. But it's always great to just give it to them as a special thing and see if they like it. We wanted to be able to have it available on our table for everyone, but we just saw that that would be too much of an expense for us to be able to do all the time. Instead of being able to give out candy to each one, we've tried to make available a small little flag, an Italian flag, that we give out to children. We don't give this out to all the adults, but this has been helpful to be able to get the attention of some of the children that walk by our tables. We'll hand them a little flag, and there's been a time or two while presenting that I'll ask them to wave their flag in the congregation, and it's always fun to see 15, 20, 25 kids raise up their flag and waving the Italian flag. And our prayer is that through this, they'll just remember to pray for missionaries. It doesn't even have to be us, but just that there's people in other countries going around the world sharing the gospel. They're not going to always remember a prayer card or the missionary at church, but they might remember that flag belongs to somebody who's going to another country who's sharing the gospel. Now, prayer cards are great, though. Let's talk about prayer cards, and you have helped me a lot on prayer cards. So, how did you guys go about prayer cards? And I'm sure that probably changed throughout your 3 years as well.
We really loved having a prayer card that was just a little bit smaller and had the rounded edges. Now, we found that design from another missionary that was on Prefield Ministry before us and had come to our church, Hope Baptist Church, that was in Shillington, Pennsylvania at the time. And his name was Russ Holland over in Norway. And he had this smaller prayer card with the rounded edges. And from the moment that I saw his prayer card, it instantly stuck out to me. It was about a year before I had started my Prefield ministry. And I saw his prayer card. I saw the size of it, how it's just a little bit different than everyone's. It had the rounded edges. And it really stuck out from, the full size card with the cornered edges that at the time, probably 75% of missionaries were using. So we wanted something a little bit different. And then my sister is really great with design and all that sort of thing. So we were at her house one weekend and we sat down and spent hours just designing this prayer card. And we had found over time one thing that did change on our prayer card was having the birthdays and anniversaries. Now, when we started Prefield Ministry, we did not want to put our birthday and anniversary on the prayer card. I don't know what it was. We were just, both of us, Katie and I, were like, no, we're not going to do it. So our first version of our prayer card did not have it. But what we found was that almost every single church, people were asking us, and that's great. They want to know that information because they want to send you birthday cards and they want to send you birthday emails and things like that. And even on the field now, I still get those. I get birthday cards. I get emails from church members that remember your birthday and your anniversary. So we found that on our next version of our prayer card, we did end up adding our birthdays and anniversaries.
That's great information. We also did not want to put our birthdays and anniversary on there, but after conversation with you, you highly recommended it, and we decided to do that. And we've actually found it a blessing. My birthday was a couple months ago after we started Prefield Ministry, and Vivian's birthday was just recently as well as our anniversary. So even recently, we've been at churches. Pretty much every church we went to around those times, there were people coming up to us and congratulating us and wishing us happy birthday. And that was just something that was nice and encouraging. We tried to keep our prayer card as simple as we could. Other than that information, we have our contact information my phone number and our email address, just simple way for people to be able to reach out to us with questions. And then on the back of our prayer card, what we've done is put our sending church information on there. I think that is so important to have your sending church information, as well as we are serving with Baptist Missions to Forgotten Peoples, and we have that information on the back of our prayer card as well. And the final things that we put on there were the QR codes for our social media and our website. And that's all we have on our prayer card except for the pictures and the design. But just that simple information, we didn't want it to be too much information, overbearing, or anything like that. Just clean, simple, and hopefully professional looking. Is there anything that you have on your prayer card that I didn't mention yet that you really enjoyed having on there?
The only thing you didn't mention that we have is having a short verse on there. Well, we actually only have part of a verse. We have Isaiah 6:9. He said, "Go and tell this people."
Oh,
The
okay.
reason being that's kind of the theme verse of our ministry. We talked about that a lot in our testimony episode. So that's really the only thing different on there. We don't have QR codes on here, actually.
Okay, I like that. The verse is great. I guess the last thing that maybe should mention is we also have just kind of like a brief title almost on there. Ours says Church Planning Reaching the Lost. And I mention that because we've had pastors and assistant pastors, and we've had people come up to us after looking at our prayer card and saying, I really like that you have specifically on there church planning. Now, God has called each missionary to different places, to different aspects, and given each one different burdens. But we talked about how our burden is specifically church planning in Italy, and our desire is to see all 107 provinces have a good, strong church in them. That has caught the attention of some people and certain pastors who really enjoy seeing missionaries with church planning. Now, there's nothing wrong with other missionaries who have other desires and goals, and there's a number of different things that we could say about that. But I just mentioned that as that is our desire, that is our goal, and the burden the Lord has put on our heart. And we've put that just right there on top of our prayer card, easy for everyone to see.
We don't have that on our prayer card, but that's how our video actually would start on deputation. Same thing. It would say church planning missionaries in Mexico City for the exact reason. That was a later thing that we added to our video, not because God changed that desire. We always had the desire, but because we found pastors that would ask us, well, what is it that you're doing? Are you doing church planning? Are you doing aid kind of work? Are you starting an institute? That sort of
Right.
thing. And not that all those other things don't come and that we won't help in those things, but that our desire, what God put in our heart, really was planting churches. So I think this was a great episode about just the practical things that a missionary goes through each and every day on their pre-field ministry, trying to reach out to churches, some things that we learned. And I know Luke is still learning and coming up with new ideas that, is coming out in these new years about how to, present yourself better at a missions conference and that sort of thing, how to have a good video, a good website, all those things. In the next episode, we're going to be doing just some practical advice, some advice that was given to us, things that we learned, practical advice for missionaries on pre-field ministry. So that'll be our next episode. Make sure you check that out.
Please don't forget to find our Facebook page, Magners to Missionaries Podcast. Give us a follow. And if you haven't found our podcast on our other streaming areas, you can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And we really would appreciate a follow on all of those areas. You can also find our personal websites that we mentioned earlier. If you're looking for an example of how you should go about creating your website, ours aren't perfect, but just something to go and look at. You can find our websites, magnerstoitalia.com or magnerstomexico.com. And if you have any questions, anything we've spoken about today, or just maybe you're looking for more advice into the practical side of life on the pre-field ministry, feel free to give us an email at magnerstomissionaries@gmail.com. We thank you so much for taking the time to listen to our podcast today, and we pray that you'll listen to the next one next week. God bless.